Welcome to CityWorks, the program that tells the story of working people in New York City and other urban centers. CityWorks is a co-production of the City University of New York's School of Labor and Urban Studies and CUNY TV. This month, we are looking at an incendiary issue: evictions of renters and foreclosures of landlords with fewer than 10 residential rental units, both of whom are suffering as a result of the COVID-19 siege of our cities. With hundreds of thousands of New Yorkers out of work, having gone through any savings and with nowhere left to turn, many face eviction from apartments this winter in the middle of a pandemic, no less. But here in New York, the state legislature passed a law effective December 28th, stopping evictions through May 1st. Tenants must show that their hardship is COVID-related. Also covered by this critical measure, landlords with 10 or fewer residential rentals can similarly seek protection from foreclosure from banks or mortgage holders. Our guests today are Cea Weaver, an independent advocate, tenant advocate on the City Planning Commission, a campaign coordinator for the Housing Justice for All Coalition. Cea is credited with a recent 18% eviction decline across the state. She also helped build the Crown Heights Tenants Union in central Brooklyn, now one of the most successful community tenant initiatives in the city. CityWorks counts those credentials as top-notch, so welcome, Cea. Glad to have you. I'd also like to welcome Winsome Pendergrass, a Jamaican-born domestic worker who's faced rent insecurity and eviction fears. She will be protected under the new law, and we're going to look to her for her response. What did she face had the law not passed, and what are her prospects to regain a job and income that will make her rent affordable? The law, after all, ceases to protect tenants after May 1st. So Winsome, let's start with you. Where are you? Where do you live? How long have you lived there? And how many people are living with you in your apartment?
I am a resident of Brooklyn now for the past 20 years. I work as a caregiver in people's home for, sick and elderly people. And I also do domestic work within house cleaning, whatever it's available. In this tough times, you can't be picky. So I am a juggler all around. So as I said, I've been in Brooklyn for the past 20 years and being a renter. This is one of the reasons why I became a member of New York Communities for Change, was because I was stuck with a loophole thing called preferential rent. And it was strangling me. It was squeezing the life out of me. And I was doing 3 jobs, basically. I was working at the hospital at night doing a 12-hour shift, and then going in the day into somebody's house to do cleaning. And somebody might say, why were you running yourself so raggedy? It was because 3 paychecks out of the month goes towards my rent. My rent was $2,100. And I still had was to pay electricity and heat and buy food and the Metro card. Nothing to save. That's how I got into being an advocate or an activist, if you want to say that.
Winsome, how many people is that rent housing, as it were? How many people are living with you?
3. When my rent was $2,100, it was myself, my sister, and my daughter. My sister was undocumented. Because of that whole situation, we have to kind of part ways and try to see rental socially different. I got something else a little lower, but it is just now my granddaughter joins me because my eldest daughter has died in Jamaica, and I now take care of my granddaughter. So it's still 3 of us, but in a different setting. So
we're sorry for your loss there.
Thank you.
Talk about how the coronavirus has hit you and your family and your neighbors and community.
Okay, so our community is devastated. I now lives in the Brownsville community. It's a community that is like forgotten in so many things, so many aspects of life. We have to fight, we have to struggle, we got to shout, we got to make a noise to be heard. We got to take to the streets, even in COVID. I think the first time we took to the streets in COVID was somewhere in April. about 15, 20 of us within the NYCC group said, you know what, COVID or no COVID, we got to go out there because there are other people who are suffering and they are quiet because some of them are afraid, because they don't know who to go to or where to find help. We went on the street making noise. We carry banners, we carry a makeshift coffin, which was to really stand in solidarity for the people who were just dying around us. Every now and again, you hear this person call to say, well, I lost an aunt, I lost my father, I lost a cousin. And so we went out there and our major cry was cancel the rent and mortgages and to fund undocumented people who, some of them do pay taxes while they work for themselves. I have a friend who is undocumented, but she has a little cleaning business and she registered that business and she paid taxes on that business. But guess what? Just because she was undocumented, she could not get any of the relief or the stimulus check, the $1,200 that came out at the time. So we really took to the street, and with the direction of Cea and others, we really took it to the places where our voices would be heard, like City Hall. We went to Governor Cuomo's office, and we even went to some of our senators who seem a little too silent. We went to their offices and we say, stand up, step up, speak up, and let's hear what you're going to do for us.
Did you think that the legislature would have your back, would answer your call?
We think that if we applied enough pressure on them, and if we shout loud enough and we threaten them, which we did, to say the next election, we're going to remember what you do to us. And it's only because of constant pressure why they do really do something in the end.
We're going to get more on that in just a second, but let me bring Cea Weaver into this. I mean, Cea, how did Winsome in the first place hook up with your organization, as far as you know, and how has the movement for tenants' rights and for housing rights more broadly changed in the years that you've been part of it?
Yeah. Winsome and I met years ago, I think because Winsome, you were looking to get connected with the Working Families Parody, right? And they sent you down the hall to meet us at NYCC.
Yes.
I think you can do both, right?
Yeah.
Yes.
So I met Winsome when she was organizing to save her home from basically a huge rent increase because of a loophole in our rent stabilization laws called preferential rent. And so we worked together for a really long time to not only ensure that she could stay in her home, but also that thousands and thousands of people who also suffered from preferential rent, 250,000 households in the country, or sorry, in the state, my bad, could be protected. And that loophole in our rent stabilization laws is now closed. So that was a big victory for the tenant movement in 2019. And we were just, getting used to that victory, thinking about where we might go from here when the coronavirus hit. And we had been saying for a long time in the housing movement that everyone is just one paycheck away from an eviction. And so for Winsome and the other members of our organizations, that's a reality. That's a reality that folks live every single day. What happened on March 17th of this year, or of last year, 2020, was that millions of other people experienced that reality at the same time.
As COVID hit.
Right. So as millions of people became unemployed or underemployed almost overnight, as the state shut down its economy, as a country shut down its economy, everyone suddenly turned to the housing movement, and they were like, those people in the streets with the signs saying we're all about to be evicted, there was something to what they were saying. Yeah. And so I think that the thing about the COVID pandemic is that it's exposing just how weak our social safety net is in this country. And it's exposing, everyone is like, it's true that I don't have any savings. It's true that my rent is really expensive, but everyone wants to believe that they can hang on, right? So everyone's like, I'm not saving anything for a rainy day, but I paid my rent this month. That's okay. I'll work it out. We're going to work it out. What COVID did is it exposed just how vulnerable we all really are to evictions if we lose our jobs and lose our income. So almost overnight, thousands and thousands of people wanted to join the housing movement. So it was both a tremendously scary year for us, but also a year of tremendous opportunity as millions of people sort of turned to us for work.
So let's just nail down a little bit more. We never do enough media coverage of our victories, and I don't want us to speed by the extraordinary, what they call a generational victory of 2019. That law that you all mobilized and got passed that ended that statewide loophole and put in new protections statewide that hadn't existed before. There was a huge victory. So that is of importance to this conversation. But it is also incredibly important how the discussion around rent and foreclosure and eviction and housing as a human right has shifted even since 2019. So can you just talk a little bit about that? Because it seems to me as an outsider that we've gone from talking about the details of rent control to talking about the very notion of collecting rents in a pandemic. But you have small landlords, meaning landlords of small numbers of units, also in your movement. How?
Yes.
Let's ask Winsome, you want to answer that first and then Cea?
Okay. So I myself have friends who we call them mom and pop landlords who has a home, and they may have a tenant or two of themselves to help them along. But here comes COVID, and the tenant or two is now out of a job. Some of them would blatantly say to me, should I just let that person just keep living and there is nothing coming forward? While a lot of them are, they are considerate. They know, they understand what is happening. And this is one of the things that we were so passionate about, to have the governor or legislature, whatever, to really understand the plight of the small man. Understand the plight of the person who, because the cost of rent was so high before, as Cea said, they couldn't put anything aside. Or if they did, after 3 months of COVID, it was exhausted.
So Cea, what is in the legislation also for those landlords, and how do you keep this coalition together?
Yeah, so I think what's in the legislation for small landlords is that they are also protected from foreclosures. And so that's really important, right? And they're protected not only from private mortgage foreclosures, but also tax foreclosures. And that's really important to keep people in their homes. So what we're really trying to say with our movement and with the whole cancel rent movement, with the movement for housing as a human right, is that everyone needs a home to live, and that there are people in society who are sort of hoarding wealth and hoarding property, and that rather than let the wealth be concentrated at the top, we should be guaranteeing a home for everybody. And so it's completely true that the landlords that Winsome is talking about, it's completely true that they need their rental income to maintain their homes. It's at the same time true that evicting that tenant isn't going to make the money materialize. And the threat of an eviction is not going to make that money materialize. The truth is, what's the phrase? You can't get blood from a stone, right? There is no money to pay the rent because all of the money is being concentrated at the top. And so that's why we're really saying that we should tax the wealthiest in our society. We should create a robust landlord hardship fund. And we think that the government has a responsibility to ensure that not only can tenants stay housed, landlords can maintain their property. The reason the government isn't intervening is because there has been sort of a consolidation of property. And we saw this in 2008. We're going to see it again right now in the hands of a few people at the top. And so that's really what we're fighting about, and we're fighting back against with the cancel rent movement.
We're going to hear more about all of this in a moment, and I'm going to ask where have the unions been, and also mention some other cities that are doing some other things with quite different cultural priorities around housing. We'll continue this conversation at CityWorks right after this break.
The CUNY School of Labor and Urban Studies is the 25th and newest school under the CUNY umbrella. Dedicated to public service and social justice, the CUNY School of Labor and Urban Studies offers undergraduate and graduate degrees in the areas of labor studies and urban studies, and certificate programs in labor relations, public administration and public policy, healthcare policy and administration, and community leadership. We pride ourselves on being an institution that brings together activists and academics. Find out more at slu.cuny.edu.
So we're back. You're watching CityWorks, and my guests are housing advocates and organizer Cea Weaver and Winsome Pendergrass. When we went to break, we were talking, or I was about to ask you the question about unions. So let's talk about that. You've had support from some unions. We've also seen some labor organizations take real estate's side in this period of massive speculation and gentrification in New York specifically. What's your message to labor organizers and workers and union members watching CityWorks today? Winsome.
Oh boy. So yes, we have had unions who stood by us, even though a certain person don't want unions to be attached to us. But there are unions who have stood by us, and I am hoping that in the future other unions would take up the mantle of standing by us, because standing with a housing group is standing with workers, because it is workers of all strata of our society that becomes union members. So we are hoping that they would consider, see what we have done, see that we are not selfishly calling for something because somebody wants to line their pocket with anything, but we are really protecting homeowners and they are workers, and by protecting the homeowners, we are protecting the children and the future of tomorrow, because there's so many kids who are in the shelters. You know, it's a shame and appalling. That's
beautifully put. Cea, to you. And why is this so urgent? I mean, the law that we've been talking about expires on May 1st.
Totally. I will name the person that Winsome didn't name, which is, of course, Governor Cuomo. And so I think that there is a lot of political pressure on labor institutions to not stand with the housing movement, right? And so that political pressure is creating divisions. It's a classic divide and conquer strategy where those that, both the real estate industry and the politicians that work for them are very effective at dividing out the working class and saying, stand with Governor Cuomo, stand with us, like we're the job creators, we're the ones who can give you that contract, and that is, those are real political pressures, especially the ones that are coming on the public sector unions. And so, I want to acknowledge that exists, right? But at the same time, I want to say a couple things. One is that housing is healthcare. And I want to shout out NYSNA and some of the other healthcare worker unions that have done a tremendous job at recognizing that.
New York State Nursing Association. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and really saying, throwing down with the housing movement to go all in and fight for an eviction moratorium, because it is just so critical that people are housed in order to fight the pandemic. And then related to that, right? Teachers can't teach, children can't learn, our schools cannot function with the level of homelessness that our schools are having to sort of deal with, right?
I also hear a wish for a kind of culture shift in New York City around housing. And I'm reminded of a news article that came across my desk recently from my friends in Barcelona, where a housing activist was elected mayor not so long ago. And the progress of that city around housing has gotten to the point where the city is now threatening landlords with multiple units that if they are maintaining empty units, rental units, residential units for more than a month, one more month, the city will take that property at half its market value and make it available to homeless Barcelonans, which number thousands, but not in the tens of thousands. Did you ever see that happening here, Winsome?
I would hope, I hope we could wake up tomorrow morning and we hear that over the news. Every news station is saying, New York is going to take this stand. It's wishful thinking, but so many times you hear they talk about affordable rent for New York. But the question we are asking is affordable to whom? A person who's just coming home with $350 per week and thinking of paying $1,200 for a studio. And someone might hear me say that and say it's one person. No, sometimes it's 3 people in a studio. This is what was open to us during the pandemic, while Cea and other leaders, we get together, we had weekly Zoom meetings, and we hear people telling their story. And a mother is saying, we are in a studio and it's 4 of us. My bed is a trampoline. My bed is a dining table. My bed is a school science lab. And she can't even go to the bathroom and get 5 minutes of peace. No one should be living like that.
The other side of this, Cea, of course, was the argument that Michael Bloomberg, our mayor, made, even on the campaign trail for president, that cities benefit from the wealth trickling down from the wealthy. And that I think his famous line was once that New York should welcome all billionaires, and of course, the housing market that meets their needs. Your response to that, Cea?
I mean, New York has basically a flat tax, a flat income tax for people who make over $300,000 a year. So that means if you make $300,000 a year or you make $1 billion a year, you are taxed exactly the same. That doesn't make sense to me, right? There's a big difference there. And so I think, you know, wealth is only trickles down if the government is willing to tax it and redistribute it. And right now in New York, that is not happening. We need a progressive taxation system, and we need that in order to fund services for homeless New Yorkers, in order to house people affordably. And, you know, there's nowhere where that is more evident than with our real estate property taxation. Both our personal income tax, but really our real estate tax system is so backwards, right? So we see in Manhattan, luxury condos where no one is paying real estate taxes, while at the same time you're seeing mom and pop homeowners in Bed-Stuy who can barely afford their monthly tax costs, right?
Surely we're going to see the real estate market respond to COVID-19. Surely it has to, because of the amount of empty properties, including commercial property, which we haven't talked about. So Cea, you have been named to the City Planning Commission by newly elected public advocate Jumaane Williams. Does this mean that there is progress in people's movements getting heard in government? And what kind of progress are you anticipating on the commission?
Yeah, the real estate market is going to respond. But unfortunately, what we often see is the real estate market responds at the very top. And so while rents are going down at the top of the market, they're sort of going up at the bottom still. And that's a real market failure. So we actually need like government intervention in order to force the market to respond in a way that works to house the people who need the most support. And so the policies that we have right now actually create value at the top of the market and ignore homelessness. And so we really need to sort of correct for that. I'm hopeful that in New York State, with a new supermajority in the state legislature, and with all the progressives who are running for city council and for mayor right now, we'll be able to really think about social housing and a culture shift on the fact that we don't need to create housing policy to address the real estate market. We need to create housing policy that's goal is to house people. So let's start there and then see where we can go.
I don't really believe in hope these days. I believe in people power, but that's just me. Winsome, what is your vision of the future? Put it that way. What do you think is going to happen before or by May 1st?
Okay, so you said Bloomberg said that there's supposed to be a trickle down effect. For there to be a trickle down effect, the pipe is clogged and it has to be unplugged.
There needs to be a plunge down. Okay, got it.
We need it to be plunged end to end. And that is why we are always recruiting, inviting, and building. And we are encouraging every tenant to get connected to an association, because we are stronger in strength and we are stronger in numbers. it was one of the most beautiful things to me when we won in 2019. I met people who said they were fighting for 30 years, for 35 years, and they couldn't get not one of those loopholes passed. But because you get big mouth people like me going on the street, willing to lay out, we had a Comoville where we sleep out there and make noise at the head at those rich people. Even though COVID has locked us in, but we want the real Redney and we want Governor Cuomo and all who is involved to know our strength is renewed and we are coming, and this time we are coming stronger. It has to change. We are tired of lip service and we're going to take it to the street and take it to them. And we need positive change now.
Perfect. That will be our last word. Winsome Pendergrass, thank you so very much. Cea Weaver, thank you. Thank you, everybody, for watching CityWorks, and thank our guests. CityWorks is a co-production of the School of Labor and Urban Studies of the City University of New York and CUNY TV. If you have questions or comments, you can reach us at cityworks@slu.cuny.edu. For CityWorks, I'm Laura Flanders.